So I figured I would do another John Deere history lesson out of some of the stuff in my collection. And actually, I'm only going to go through part of this binder that I have in front of us. It covers basically, I'm going to cover from late 1942 until I think I've got a couple of articles from 44. The reason I'm covering this is I think it's pretty interesting. I'm kind of a fan of history, particularly World War II. So what I've done is I've kind of pulled out some interesting excerpts from this binder here about dealing with World War II and just how much of an effort that the entire nation in the U.S., in this particular case, if you're watching from another country, made towards World War II. So we start off, and then hopefully we can see this on the camera. I'll center it up a little bit. I'll have to hold it. So the first one is, and these are Deere and Weber Special Service Information Binders. So this is from September 15th, 1943, dealing with wartime tractor tires and tubes. Up here at the top, it says we have a branch house letter from John Deere Tractor Company on the above subject. This article is very well written. We suggest that you post this bulletin in a conspicuous place in your store so that your customers may read the same. And here what it says the national need for increased food production during 1944 resulted in authorization of an increase in tractor production for 1944. So basically, because of metal and everything else being used for the war effort, and the need for agriculture, tractors they basically allowed Deere to produce more tractors, other companies as well. The next important problem was to utilize this increase in tractor production to the maximum. It was recognized that the use of rubber tires was essential for the following reasons. The work output of the average tractor, and I'm right here, the work output for the average tractor would be increased 25 to 30%, and a great saving in man hours would be accomplished. 15 to 20% of the normal amount of fuel would be conserved, thus making available large quantities of gasoline and diesel for armed forces. And the conservation of fuel would reduce the transportation of millions of gallons, thus releasing a large number of tank cars from transportation of heating fuels for both industry and home use, particularly in the eastern area. So basically, the rest of this article outlines how important rubber tires were for agriculture. Just kind of a cool little write-up, and it goes on to say everything that they're going to do and whatnot. Next, what I want to get into right here, March 16th, 1943. This was a special bulletin to branch houses and retail stores in North and South Dakota and Montana. We have a bulletin from the John Deere Tractor Company dated February 19th, 1943, which we quote, "A good many of our branches have been shipping their scrap to us in carload lots, and we've been extremely thankful to get this scrap because it represents a very high grade of agriculture scrap." So on down here, this noon's broadcast indicated that our president has increased his goal from 10 million to 13 million men in the armed services, and they are being inducted at a rate of 12,000 men per day. We're already finding it difficult to get sufficient men for foundry operations, and we may see within a short time labor ration on a priority basis, just the same as materials are rationed today. Men may become just as hard to get in a short time for the production of implements and repairs of material today. And I'll actually come back to some of this here in a little bit. There's another article where you realize that you may not have at this moment current demand for all of these cylinder blocks that are salvageable. And we are also familiar in the inventory provisions on scrap. We would point out, however, that there are no restrictions on how long you may hold your cylinder blocks in repair stock if you rebore them. And our recommendation is that you take all the salvageable blocks, and whether you have them immediately for sale or not, rebore them, grease them, and put them into your repair stock for future use. Basically, that says that, they want to repair the blocks instead of having to cast new ones because the metal is people to run the foundry, and the metal is extremely hard to come by. And then on this one right here is from March 4th, 1943. During the past year, it has become increasingly hard to obtain material required in the manufacture of new tractors and repairs. In many cases, actual shortages or lack of high priority rating has affected our procurement of some of the essential materials. Under these conditions, it is our patriotic duty to salvage the parts affected, or where the salvage is impractical, select alternative materials. Since we have few alternate forging steels available for crankshafts, we considered two plans that would enable us to keep the tractors up in satisfactory operating condition. First, the process of regrinding, and second, the process of metallizing. So basically what they're talking about in this particular case is actually putting a new surface on crankshafts, which in 1943 was pretty, I don't want to say radical, but it was an interesting concept. So, I mean, it just shows you the effort that everybody went to support the war effort. And this one right here is from December 21st, 1943. This was just a bulletin service to John Deere dealers. During the past 10 days, 40 John Deere service days have been held, and results from attendance standpoint have been very, very disappointing. In fact, they decided to cancel them. There are several factors contributing this to poor attendance. The flu, obviously in December, the flu would be a big deal. And then conditions brought about the war have kept farmers from these shows. So it just shows you that even shows and services and stuff like that, the war effort was really affecting those types of things. Going back to rubber tires, this is from January 17th, 1944. We've been advised that the War Production Board, and I find this really interesting, shows you that farmers have cared about their tires for a long time. We've been advised that the War Production Board's R1 rubber order, as amended for December 4th, 1943, instructs that the rubber manufacturers discontinue the clipping or shearing of circumvent overflow and the removal of minor light spots and surface imperfections not actually harmful from a service standpoint. This practice will naturally affect the appearance of tires, but obviously will in no way impair their service. When these tires begin to reach the territory, undoubtedly you're going to have some comments from farmers. So thought it well to advise you in advance. You in turn can pass this information along to your customers, since the rubber manufacturers have no choice but to follow these directions. You may have some complaints, and some farmers want to exchange some of these tires because of appearance, but that of course is out of the picture, as we are obliged to accept these tires as they are built under War Production Board orders, and as long as the service of the tires is not impaired, they are not going to be exchanges of anything of that sort. Kind of cool. Basically says that you're going to take what you can get. Second to last that I have, new style. This is not necessarily related to the war, but I do find this interesting. So this is from March 21st, 1944. Some of you may know, if you're into two cylinders. Two cylinders originally came with like a brass oil filter. And then in 1939 they went to a paper oil filter. And basically this just shows you some of the specs on those paper oil filters and when they updated them in 1944. Kind of thought that was cool. Oh, I forgot I had one more in here. Oops. I'm going to lose it here in just a second. Sorry. So, April 4th, 1944, titled Opportunity for Dealers, Parts, and Servicemen Inducted into the Service to be Assigned to the Corps of Engineers. We know that our dealers need their parts and servicemen, and that they are making every effort to have them deferred from the draft, all of which we feel is quite proper. Obviously, you need somebody to service things here at home for agriculture production. However, there may be some of these men inducted into the service. Many of them would prefer to be assigned to the Corps of Engineers in the U.S. Army, as they would feel to be better qualified in that branch of service because of their past experience. Attached is a copy of a letter dated March 23rd, 1944, addressed to Mr. Burton F. Peake, President of Deere & Company, together with a memorandum entitled Information Needed by U.S. Engineers in order to have inductees assigned to the Corps of Engineers, U.S. Army. We're giving you this information so that you'll be in a position to help your parts and servicemen who may wish to apply for assignment to this branch of service. And if you follow it, here's the letter and details what they need to do. and so on and so forth. So really kind of cool. I really appreciated that. Definitely shows you it was a national effort. Like I said, I think World War II is just kind of fascinating in terms of effort. And this is just something that I found interesting. On July 10th, 1944, we've been advised by our factory that there will be no more John Deere umbrellas available for the balance of this year. Therefore, all orders, including back orders on file for some, have been canceled. So no more umbrellas. And I don't know if that, it doesn't specify whether or not that's a it doesn't specify if that's a war effort thing or just, couldn't get the canvas or whatnot. But anyway, I figured that was just a quick, kind of World War II history lesson related to Deere, some of the things that Deere encountered for World War II. I'll put this back on the shelf and we'll get it out later when I'm in need of a little bit more of a video. And we'll do some more history later. Thanks for watching.